The rain that morning came in sheets, drumming against the rooftops and pooling in the cracked asphalt outside Westbrook High. By the time the first bell rang, the downpour had eased to a fine mist that clung to the skin like cold breath. The smell of wet pavement and chalky brick filled the air as students shuffled into the building, shaking off umbrellas and hoodies. Miss Elena Harper moved through the corridors with a measured calm, the click of her black heels tapping against the scuffed linoleum. Her dark brown hair was neatly pinned at the nape of her neck, a habit she'd kept since her days in competition. She carried herself with quiet confidence, the kind that didn't need to be announced, only felt. But that morning, she sensed something different in the air. A current. A restlessness that hummed beneath the chatter of teenagers. Room 2B was already buzzing when she stepped inside. Backpacks thudded to the floor, pens clicked, voices overlapped. She moved to the chalkboard, drawing neat lines for the day's literature lesson, her handwriting precise. But her attention was drawn, as it often was, to the far corner of the room. Four boys sat there, legs sprawled, laughter sharp. Tyler Mason led the pack. 17, with a mess of blonde hair and a smirk that looked carved into his face. He had a way of speaking that made every sentence sound like a dare. His friends, Travis, Kyle, and Darren, were shadows to his flame. Elena turned back to the board, but the sound of chairs scraping made her pause. Tyler was standing, strolling forward like he was walking onto a stage. "Hey, Miss Harper," his voice was smooth, too smooth. "Come here, pretty. Got something to show you." The words rippled through the class, drawing smirks, side glances, and one muffled giggle. Elena capped her marker, facing him. "Back to your seat, Tyler." But he didn't stop. He came right up to her desk, his grin widening. And then, in one swift, thoughtless motion, his hand came up and slapped her across the face. The sound cracked the air like a gunshot. Someone gasped. A pen rolled off a desk and hit the floor. Elena's head turned slightly with the impact, her cheek stinging. But her eyes didn't flinch. She stood still, breathing in through her nose, exhaling slowly. Something ancient stirred in her posture, a stillness she hadn't needed in years. If you've ever thought you knew exactly who someone was, only to discover a side of them you never imagined, that's what's about to happen here. And if stories like that pull you in, the ones that blend grit, heart, and transformation, then now's a good time to subscribe to Soul Touch Stories. We share moments every week that just might stay with you for life. Elena's voice was calm, almost too calm. "Do you really want to do this?" Tyler laughed, but there was a waver in it. "What's a teacher gonna do? Call the principal?" She moved before the last word was out. Her hand snapped up, locking around his wrist, twisting just enough to make his knees buckle. His body dropped with a startled grunt. It wasn't rage, it was precision. Controlled force, perfectly measured. "Sit down." The room was dead silent. Tyler stumbled backward to his desk, rubbing his wrist. His friend stared at her with something between shock and fear. But pride doesn't die easily. The next day, the paper planes started flying during her lecture. The day after, they slammed books shut mid-sentence. By Thursday, she found her car smeared with mud in the parking lot. That Friday, rain returned, turning the parking lot into a patchwork of puddles. Elena crossed the asphalt under a flickering street lamp, her briefcase tucked under one arm. Tyler leaned against the hood of her car, arms folded. His two friends stood close behind, smirking like they already knew how this would go. "Thought you were tough," Tyler said, stepping forward. "I'm not here to prove anything," she replied evenly. Kyle reached for her arm, and that was his mistake. She pivoted, blocked, and redirected him to the ground so fast he barely had time to register the motion. The splash from the puddle was the only sound. "You think strength is about hurting people," she said, her voice low but cutting through the rain. "You don't know the first thing about it." Tyler's grin faltered. The next Monday, he didn't speak during class. The silence from his corner was almost unsettling. And then, one afternoon, when the room was empty except for the two of them, he stayed behind. "My dad," his voice was flat. "He used to hit me. Guess I thought that's how you make people listen." Elena felt her chest tighten. It was the first unguarded thing he'd ever said. "Respect isn't taken by force," she told him. "It's earned. And it starts with how you treat people." From then on, the changes came in small steps. He stopped throwing paper. He began showing up early. One day, as she packed her things, he lingered. "Will you teach me? You know, the stuff you did?" And so they began. Twice a week, in the empty gym, she trained him. She corrected his stance, taught him to breathe, to listen. His punches started wild, all fury and no focus, but she chipped away at the chaos. Weeks turned into months. He opened up in pieces. He talked about protecting his younger sister from their father's temper. About wanting to leave town after graduation. One rainy night in December, a group of seniors cornered Tyler behind the gym. They shoved him, taunted him, dared him to swing first. He didn't. He blocked, he redirected, he stepped away. It was the first time in his life he'd chosen not to fight. By the end of the school year, Tyler wasn't the boy who'd slapped his teacher. He was captain of the wrestling team. He'd pulled his grades up. And on the last day of classes, he stood at the podium during the assembly, speaking to the whole school. "I used to think being strong meant making people afraid of me. But someone showed me that real strength is helping people feel safe. I want to be that kind of strong." The applause was deafening. Elena didn't clap, she just smiled, because she knew applause wasn't the real victory. Stories like these, about change, redemption, and finding the strength to do better, are why we tell them on Soul Touch Stories. If this one touched you, like, comment, and subscribe. The next story might be the one someone you love needs to hear. On the very last afternoon, Tyler came to her desk. The room was empty, the air heavy with summer heat. "Thanks," he said quietly. "For not giving up on me." She studied his face, older now, calmer, the sharpness dulled in the best way. "Promise me you'll use what you've learned to protect, not hurt." "I will," he said. And she believed him. As he left, the light from the window stretched long across the floor. She thought about all the fights she'd won in her life, in the ring, on the mat, in classrooms like this. And she realized the most important ones were the ones no one saw. Because the strongest strike you can throw isn't the one that knocks someone down. It's the one that helps them stand back up.